my vision is really that of the mayor and council. So it's the implementation of the mayor and council's vision, which was conveyed very clearly to me, not only as a part of the interview process, but also in my discussions with them, which is economic development. It's the development of the area's economy and making sure that the city is at the table to provide and facilitate the environment for economic development, which is not only the creation of jobs, but high-paying and sustainable jobs.
And how would you go about creating economic development in Tucson?
Well, again, I'm not sure that we're necessarily creating it. I think the city government is in the role of facilitating and making sure that we are providing the environment for success for companies to do business here, not only potentially new companies, but existing companies, and making sure that our governance, if you will, and the policies that are established by the mayor and council are consistent with providing that environment for them to be successful.
So how would you describe your leadership style?
That's another question that was asked as a part of the interview process, and what I told the council and the panels is that I believe it has four components. First is it's flexible. I don't think that you can approach every problem or every situation the same. I think that it's a function of the situation, the urgency of the situation, the stakeholders. It's a variety of different pieces that allow you to then make a decision, but the approach is potentially different depending on the situation. So that's the first thing. Second is I tend to be very collaborative. I look for win-win situations, win-win opportunities. But it's not just about win-win, it's also win-neutral or neutral-win. Oftentimes we forget about the opportunity for successful solutions by discounting a neutral solution. And if there's two parties at the table, a win-neutral is just as good or better than not doing anything at all because one of the parties wins. Thirdly, I'm consultative in my decision-making. I will seek to understand issues. I will ask opinions. I will ask for feedback from a variety of different stakeholders. I will reach out and have conversation. I'll look for ways that I can understand it in more detail. It provides me with a better environment to make a decision. And fourthly, I'm decisive. Once I understand the situation, I will make the call, I will make the decision.
So what are some of your other priorities?
Well, clearly our budget situation. The city's budget is in a difficult state. I guess it pales in comparison to some of the things that the city has faced in the past. But clearly, with some of our costs that we know of that are coming up, it'll be a challenge for us to figure out ways to either increase revenues or reduce expenses. The only way to do that and approach that is in a collaborative manner, making sure that the staff is sitting around the table and having a conversation with the council to identify priorities and identify how we can, as a team, approach a structurally balanced budget. Am I confident we can do that? Absolutely. Am I confident we can do that overnight or in 1 year? Not so much. I think it will take us over a couple of years possibly to identify and implement the types of changes that might be necessary in order for us to end up with a structurally balanced budget.
What's your opinion on one-time fixes that are used quite often in the city?
Sure. One-time fixes are totally appropriate when necessary and when used for one-time monies or one-time expenses. Oftentimes there's people that are critical of that. I'm not necessarily critical of that. They are a constraint, though, that we have to understand and realize may or may not be available the following year. And the reason I say may or may not is because there could be other one-time fixes or one-time sources of revenue that might be available to us. The difficulty is in making sure that the decision that's made to use one-time revenue sources is then revisited soon into the fiscal year so that you can anticipate how you're going to address that potential shortfall in the coming year. So although there's always opportunities for one-time fixes, it's not something obviously that we can depend on. So ultimately, in order to have a structurally balanced budget, we've got to look at revenues equaling expenses, and the revenues are generally the ongoing revenues. Although again, there is opportunity for us to use one-time revenues for one-time expenses. Obviously, I can't even comment on all that I see just because it's a pretty big project, if you will, pretty big organization to get your arms around. My hope and my expectation is that as I go through the budget process and I go through understanding and delving into the budget, I will identify other opportunities, other challenges that we face as an organization. Some of the things just on a very high level, we are expecting a high turnover rate, particularly in our fire and police in the very near future. That will cause us some challenges, but with challenges come opportunities. So I've been meeting with staff to try to understand some of the issues that type of turnover, the number of turnover, or the percentage of turnover that we face will be seen as an opportunity. And again, looking for the long term. And so all of the conversations that we have are around long-term investment, not only in our budget or from a budget standpoint, but also in our staffing. Our staff is our bread and butter. You know, those are the folks that actually get the services out to the public, and they are the ones that we need to make sure understand where we're headed and engage them so that those succession plans, when the turnover does occur, we're ready for it and we have safety nets, if you will, in order for us to deal with that turnover. I'm not sure I can comment on what we're doing really well or what we're not doing really well. I can give you my first impression of dealing and meeting with various staff members in various departments. I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed with the caliber of the individuals that we have working for the City of Tucson. They appear very passionate. They're very excited to be a part of the team. I think that as time goes on, I'll get to understand the issues a little more. And then I'll be able to comment more specifically. But my first impression in walking around and meeting folks is that there's a tremendous wealth of knowledge and commitment and passion to this organization, and more importantly to the Tucson community. And I see that as huge in terms of the potential. And if we can tap that excitement that the staff has, we can make Tucson even better than it already is.
What is the fiscal position of the city going forward?
Well, it's hard to tell you exactly what the fiscal position is of the city because I don't know. And I've looked at it. I understand what the budget says. I understand how, on a very high level, that will work for this fiscal year. But I'm not sure what that means for next fiscal year. There's still some unknowns out there. We don't know what kind of increases in costs we might see. We don't know what our retirement costs are going to be next year. We have an idea, but we don't know exactly. Well, it would be difficult for me to suggest to you that we've got serious issues or not, because I really don't know. It's obvious to me that the process that was used to develop the budget was a very positive one. There was engagement by the staff and the council to develop for what I will tell you this year was a good budget, and it's balanced. And I believe that's the approach we'll take in future years. But we'll also dissect, because I think we're going to have some continued struggles and some continued challenges in making it or getting it to a point of structural balance.
What are your ties to Tucson?
Sure, that's a great question. Well, first and foremost, I do know a lot of people in Tucson. I worked here for many years. My family and I lived here for many years ago, but we were here. The interest that I have, obviously, in Tucson is I feel like I grew up here. I was born and raised in Douglas. My family was from there. When I came up to go to the university here, we decided to stay. We love Tucson, and when you grow up in a small town in the area, if you will, Tucson becomes the big city, and so you come into Tucson for a variety of things, shopping and sports and so forth. So I've always had a soft spot for Tucson, but I also believe that a strong Tucson is strong for Southern Arizona, and the value, if you will, of a strong and vibrant economic engine, if you will, in Tucson and in the Tucson community as a whole will be great for the entirety of Southern Arizona. My expertise, if you will, or my background, my education is in engineering. I'm a registered professional engineer. I also have I have a master's in business with an emphasis in accounting. So as you can tell, I like numbers. I enjoy the budget process. I'm probably one of only a small number of people that actually look forward to preparing the budget and going through that process. But more importantly, I think that I have an understanding of how projects go together, how infrastructure works, both from a civil infrastructure as well as a social infrastructure, kind of the fabric of the community that's important in order for us to be successful. which goes back to the economic development, because oftentimes the government is tasked with providing that, we'll call it civil infrastructure, for business to be successful, and that's everything from roads to water to, pick it, quality of life type improvements to the community. So I'm really excited to be here. I believe I can bring some expertise to the staff, to the council, to the community, to assist, and really as a part of the team. I appreciate you asking me about my leadership in that, but really I see myself as a team member. And I think that's an important role for me personally and professionally, and making sure that the team as a whole is strong. I want to be a part of a great team, and I believe we've got one here.
And not politically, really, but what do you love about Tucson?
Politically?
Not politically.
I heard you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
No, I heard
Kind
you.
of soften it up.
Well, it's the quality of life. I can tell you that as I prepared for my interview with the city council, I read through, well, I can't say I read through the entire document, but I at least skimmed and read through a lot of the Plan Tucson. And that's an amazing document. And although I knew that I wanted to live in Tucson, and that was kind of our goal, if you will, as a family, when I read through that and started looking through the Plan Tucson, I realized I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that vision, that plan, because the quality of life that Tucson offers, in my opinion, is unparalleled in this area, in this region. And so to be a part of that really excites me, excited me to apply and go through the process, and excites me to be here today. So that's what I love about Tucson is the potential, but also just look around, and the quality of life is just, again, unparalleled.
What's your impression of Tucson, or however you want to start from there, in terms of people?
I'm going to go on a limb here a little bit and maybe contrast Tucson with our neighbors up north. I like to hike and train and exercise and so forth, and I had an opportunity to train and go up Piestetua, is that how you pronounce it? Piestetua Peak, and I've done that a few times. And then I also had an opportunity, and have, since I've been here, been going up and down Tumamoc Hill. And the difference in the people is really amazing. As I hiked up north, you could say good morning to a lot of people, and you would get responses on occasion. Here in Tucson, going up Tumamoc, it's rare when you say good morning that someone doesn't respond to you, favorably by the way, and says good morning back. And I think that really speaks to the fiber of this community, and what a wonderful community it is because of the people. The people are solid, they understand what they have here, and they're excited about it. They take advantage of it in a very positive light. And I can just tell you, as what was an outsider looking in, it's very refreshing to be able to participate in something like that and see that difference. And I'll give you just a little sidebar there. I was actually, my family and I were coming into Tucson to visit a doctor a few weeks ago before I started. And I saw something that really encapsulates what I believe city employees for the city of Tucson are, and that's a team. There was an accident at the intersection of Kolb and Speedway, and they were pretty much wrapping it up, and we were in one of the very left lanes, and I was observing what I'm assuming was a firefighter getting ready to get into his fire truck. And he stopped for a moment. He was just about to open the door. He stopped, and then he walked over to the police officer who was actually helping with traffic control. And I couldn't hear what they said, but it was obvious by their body language that the firefighter was very genuinely thanking the police officer for their help and keeping them safe. And those are two very radically different departments. We oftentimes think of them the same, but they're very different. And that small gesture, that kindness, if you will, that appreciation really demonstrates the care that we have for each other in this community. And I look forward to taking advantage of that, if you will, and using that to our advantage in the long term to build even a stronger team and address some of the tough issues that are facing us at this point.
What were some of the things that you missed about Tucson, and what are you enjoying now?
Oh, okay, great. And just by way of background, we moved to Tucson as I came to school here, went to the university, and by the way, it is the University of Arizona. When I graduated, we decided to stay here, and so I went to work for some consulting firm, and also for Pima County, and had the opportunity to move to Southern California, and we moved to Southern California. And we missed Tucson the whole time we were in Southern California. All we talked about was getting back. But I had an opportunity to move back home, if you will, back to where I grew up, and be the public works director and the city manager eventually. But all that time, there is still a certain chemistry in Tucson. There's still a certain fiber, if you will, that we missed. And since we've been back, it's everything from the people, as I mentioned earlier, all the way to opportunities for shopping and opportunities for culture and a variety of things that as you move away, you miss, you long for it. And it's not to suggest that living in a small town or in a smaller environment is not a great thing. It is. It's wonderful from a lot of perspectives. But as we came back to Tucson, we realized just how much we did miss a lot of those attributes, those things, those assets that are all around us here in Tucson.
How is your family adapting to the big city?
My family is excited, great. We have 4 children, and one of them lives here and do our grandkids. They're excited. They're adapting to us being here wonderfully, because that way Grandma and Grandpa can spoil them rotten, which is wonderful, and that's our jobs to do that. The others are very excited. They'll be going to school here next year. Probably won't be this year, but the following year they'll be moving here as well, and they're really excited. They've already come up and they helped us pick out a house. We are very close and tight-knit family, and so we do things together. So we had a big family council meeting, and we talked about the opportunity to come to Tucson, and everybody's on board, and we're very excited about that. And to the point where we thought it would take them longer to warm up to the idea, but they are all over it from day one. So we're excited about that.
So as a U of A alum, what are you most looking forward to? Going to the games or?
Yes.
Football or basketball?
Yes.
All of the above.
Yes. You know, as a U of A alum, we obviously are very interested in the sports venues that are here, and we're excited about participating in those. But there's also other pieces too. There's a theater and the symphony and those kinds of things that we are also interested in. But I can tell you that as a U of A alum, we are very interested in participating, and not only from a sports standpoint, but also looking for partnerships with the university, how the city government can partner with the university. I know we've got partnerships on a variety of fronts, and I'm really thinking that there's probably some opportunities there, working again with the mayor and the city council to make sure that those partnerships are consistent with their policies and their direction. The streetcar project on a macro scale and on a micro scale, quite frankly, is just a phenomenal project. It's probably one of the most positive projects that we've seen in Tucson for many years. And the fact that we've seen the investment in the streetcar translate into development along the corridor, and to get that excitement, and you can see it. I participated briefly in the second Saturday event downtown, and to see the amount of people walking around and just enjoying themselves is really a function of that critical mass, and we can see that now with the streetcar and that effort. So clearly that was a catalyst for a lot of that investment and for a lot of the opportunities that we see today. But the opportunities are endless, and I believe that the opportunities on most fronts will only be limited by our ability to imagine them and our innovation and creativity.